السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين سيدنا مولانا وحبيبنا وقرة أعيننا قائد الغر المحجلين وشفيع المذنبين والسيد ولد آدم ولا فخر محمد بن عبد الله الهاشمي القرشي وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن والاه. ثم أما بعد. So alhamdulillah, we continue reading from Qutb al-Arifin, or the guiding pole of the path of the knowers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we are in the midst of the second set of chapters that deal with spiritual refinement, or tahdhib al-nafs wal-riyada. And in our last session, or our latest session, Imam al-Laja'i, he draws this very profound example as is his style from the Quran, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah At-Tawbah, إِنَّ اللَّهَ اشْتَرَى مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ أَنفُسَهُمْ وَأَمْوَالَهُم بِأَنَّ لَهُمُ الْجَنَّةِ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has purchased the nufus and that which the nufus think they own, al-amwal, right? So we say this is a type of affiliation, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala huwa malikul kull, He is a sovereign over everything, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has purchased this, and in return we get paradise. And then he went on to talk about what is it that we actually gave up. We only gave up that which blinds us or veils us from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the nafs. And then he said, unlike the qalb, right, which is the higher level of consciousness, let's say. So if we were to think of the different aspects of the human being, and we've talked about this in some detail in the past. So we have al-nafs, and we have al-aql, the intellect, and we have al-qalb, and we have the ruh, the spirit, and we have something else that he mentions called as-sir, or the innermost being. And some of the Muslim theologians and ulama and awliya have also seen these as levels of consciousness. So the lowest one being, or the most primitive or basic one being, that of the nafs. So that of the, let's call it the primal instinct to eat, to sleep, to procreate, to drink, to protect oneself, to seek revenge. All these sorts of things are based on that very lowest level of consciousness, which is very much mired in the I, right? It's very much about me and myself and I. I need to do this and I need to do that, and this is affecting me in this way. And a large part of humanity, if not most of them, kind of never really get beyond that, kind of operate on this level of al-ana, right? Ananiya, which really contradicts insaniya. So if we think of insaniya as humanity, so your true humanity, your insaniya, is to transcend your ananiya, right? فأن تترقى عن الأنانية هي الإنسانية. So this taraqi, or to rise above and transcend just the I and the me, this ananiya, to move on to insaniya. And then when you become insan, right, true human being in every sense of the word, then you can be operating on a higher level of consciousness, like at the level of the qalb, right, or of the ruh. Aql fits in there somewhere, but definitely the highest level is the sir, right, the innermost being, that which connects directly without hijab, right, without intermediary between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But in order to get to that and to operate at that higher level of consciousness, one must dispense with the lower level, right? One must accept the deal that has been struck between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as the author mentions, between you and Allah, that He has purchased your nufus and your amwal, right? That which you think you attribute to yourself. And in return, we get this higher level of consciousness. So either Jannati Adn, so the Jannah of the next world, or also can be understood, I think, to mean Jannat al-Ma'arif, right? The Jannah of this world, which is the Jannah of operating on this high level of consciousness, or Jannat al-Ma'rifah, right? The Jannah of truer and more intimate knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he then went to talk a little bit about how one then can get to and traverse this. So the next section then tells us this higher level of consciousness that begins with az-zuhud fil kawnayn, as he mentions it, the zuhud of al-kawnayn being alim al-ghayb, alim al-shahada wa alim al-ghayb, so the perceived world and the next world, who are nonetheless created worlds and they're created things, but to be concerned more with the uncreated and the one who is the creator, namely Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فيقول فصل الزهد في الكونين بداية الغيبة عن الخلق وأول المعراج إلى رياض المشاهدة. So renunciation في الكونين, right? So the renunciation within the kawnayn, within these two worlds. بداية الغيب is the beginning of غيب عن الخلق, to be oblivious or absent from, or let's say not preoccupied with creation, and it is the first mi'raj, the first ascendancy or step إلى رياض المشاهدة, to the garden of mushahada, right, to the garden of witnessing the divine in an immediate and experiential way and not just in a intellectual way. So he says رحمه الله اعلم رحمك الله أن الرؤية تنقسم قسمين. القسم الأول رؤية بصر الوجه والقسم الثاني رؤية بصيرة القلب. He said, know that vision can be thought as in two different types. The first, القسم الأول, رؤية بصر الوجه, is the vision of the face, the physical vision of the eyes, right? Me looking at you or looking at the camera, you're looking back. والقسم الثاني رؤية بصيرة القلب. And then the second one, the second type, is the vision of the inner eye or the insight of the heart. فبتمثيل تعذر بصر الوجه عن الرؤية يتضح لك تعذر بصيرة القلب عن النظر. وبتمثيل صحة البصر الوجه يتضح لك أيضا صحة بصر القلب، فبصر الوجه إذا اعتل نوره لا يغني عنه ضياء الشمس شيئا، فكيف إذا اجتمع زوال نور البصر وغسق الليل. So he says, we're drawing these two different types in order to compare so you can understand what we mean by healthy basira, right, healthy inner eye vision, and unhealthy or diseased inner eye vision. So the same way that vision works with the face, in other words, the vision of the eyes, in a similar manner. So if we have healthy vision, physical vision that is of the eyes, then we can also draw a comparison to healthy vision of the heart. So for example, the vision of the eyes, إذا اعتل نوره لا يغني عنه ضياء الشمس شيئا. So if there's an issue with the vision of the eyes, right, partial blindness or some sort of blindness or some sort of inability to see, that's what it means by اعتل نوره. So اعتل في علة, there is some sort of defect in the vision. لا يغني عنه ضياء الشمس شيئا. Then no matter how bright the sun is, it's not going to help you see better. Right? Because that's how our eyes work, right? They refract light. That's why we can't see in the dark, because there's very minimal refraction of light because there is no light. But if we have, no matter how much light the sun can produce, but we have an issue with our vision itself, we still won't be able to see. فكيف إذا اجتمع زوال نور البصر وغسق الليل. So how then should we look at it if we combine زوال نور البصر, so the light of vision, literally is what he's saying, is not there, وغسق الليل, والغسق هو الظلمة, right, and the darkness of the night. So neither the sun rays are out and you can't see too well, how could you see anything? وليس غسق الليل على بصر الوجه بأشد سوادا وظلمة من سواد حب الدنيا وظلمتها على بصيرة القلب. And he said that the darkness of the night and its effect on one's ability to see is not less severe, right, in terms of darkness, than the darkness that comes from love of the dunya and the darkness that it casts over the vision of the heart. So darkness of night here in this metaphor is comparable to the darkness that is brought upon one's soul by love and preoccupation of the dunya, right? Of the fleeting, right? Of that which does not remain. And in our language here, al-fani, right? And we said earlier, previous session, that the theologians define two main categories of things. So on one side we have Allah, and then we have on the other side anything but Allah, kulli ma siwa Allah. So the world, the dunya, everything can become under that rubric or that category. Kulli ma siwa Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything besides Allah. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is unique and individual and by himself and not in the other category. So anything that distracts us from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that preoccupies us and captures our attention to the degree that we are remiss in our attention giving to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then will be a darkness upon us. And more so, it will be a veil of darkness rather than a veil of light, because there are such things as veils of light, we'll get into later. But it will be a veil of darkness if it is something from that which is iniquitous or illicit or of the vying and competing and of the frivolity of the dunya, which is what I believe the author is saying here. ثم يقول وهذا مثل يضرب للجاهل الرديء الحال والعالم الفاسق الراغب في الحظ العاجل. And he said this example we have struck applies to the ignorant person who is of a bad state and the alim, right, the person who is not of ignorance, the knowledgeable person, ولكنه فاسق, right, but is corrupt nonetheless, الراغب في الحظ العاجل, the one who seeks out the fleeting allotment, as we'll translate it, الحظ العاجل, right, that which you can get from the dunya. فإذا أشرق نور الشمس وانجلت الظلمة عن الأفق وكان نور البصر سالما من الخلل ثبتت الأقدام على الطريق للسالك وإن كان في الطريق وعر. So he says, فإذا أشرق نور الشمس, if the rays of the sun are abundant and come out, وانجلت الظلمة عن الأفق, right, and the darkness dissipates or disappears from the horizon, وكان نور البصر سالما من الخلل, and the physical vision of the eyes is free from any defect, from any shortcoming, from blindness, so your eyes work fine. ثبتت الأقدام على الطريق للسالك وإن كان في الطريق وعر, right? So then the feet will be firmly planted on the way for the salik, right? And salik we always translate as seeker, and we do suluk, but salik also in a literal meaning means someone yasluku, a literal tariq, a literal way, like rock climbing or hiking, right? تسلك طريقا. So الطريق ليس بمعبد, right? It's not a graveled way or an asphalt way or cemented. You have to kind of figure out your way. So this is what we call by salik, right? Making your way. So he said that the feet will be firmly planted on the way, on the path for the salik, for the seeker, even if there is danger. وإن كان في الطريق وعر, right? والوعر is like unknown things or dangerous things or things you have to be, you can't just close your eyes and walk. You have to kind of watch where you're going. But if you see fine and the sun is out, then your feet will still firmly be planted and you will avoid the pitfalls, right? If there's a hole or a cliff that if you take another step you fall off of it. But if the sun is out and you can see, then you won't even go near it. So وإن كان في الطريق وعر, even if there's some danger in the path, you'll be able to see it and your feet will be firmly planted. This is for the vision of the eyes. فإذا لم يوجد للشمس شعاع ولا للبصر نور لم تثبت الأقدام على طريق سالك وإن لم يكن بالطريق وعر. And the adverse is true. So if there's no sun ray out, the rays of the sun are not out, and there is a defect in one's vision, then your feet will not be firmly planted on the way, even if there's no danger in the path, even if it looks like an easy path, but there's no sun, it's dark, and you can't see, then how are you going to navigate that path? فإن الأقدام لا تثبت عن طريق إلا بوجود نور البصر وضياء الشمس. So that means that feet will not firmly be planted and find their way on a path except by the existence or combination of two things, the light of one's vision and the light of the sun, right? Or, so let's call it external and internal light. There's another way to look at it. So the internal light is your eyes can see fine, and then the external light is the light of the sun around you. هذا في حق عالم الشهادة الحسي. He said this is true of العالم الشهادة, the realm or the world of perception, right? عالم الشهادة, we can perceive things, we see them, we hear them, so forth. الحسي, right? That we can feel and touch, it's palpable. لكن يستخرج العبد الفطن من هذا المثل المتعلق بعالم الشهادة معنى آخر يتوصل به إلى معرفة أسرار عالم الغيب والملكوت المعنوي وهو المطلوب المرغوب فيه لا ينفك عنه سالك مجد في سيره. He said, however, العبد الفطن, right, the endeavoring and the intelligent servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the emotionally and spiritually intelligent servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is what we call fitana, it's probably the best way I can translate it, al-fatin. من هذا المثل, from this example that is connected with the realm of the seen, they can extrapolate another meaning that they can arrive to the knowledge of the secrets of alim al-ghayb wal-malakut, right, of the realm of the unseen and of the higher cosmology, the higher cosmos. Al-ma'nawi walaysa bil-hissi, right? Al-ma'nawi means in terms of meanings that we can understand and interpret in our heart, not what we can see in our eyes, see with our eyes. وهو المطلوب المرغوب فيه لا ينفك عنه سالك مجد في سيره. And this is actually what is sought. This is what we need as provision for the salik, right? For the seeker towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this life. Al-mujid, right? Someone who's mujid fi sayrihi, the one who's serious on their journey, on their path. فإن معرفة الطريق قبل السفر بالوصف والدليل أيسر على السالك من خروجه على الطريق المجهول الصعب على مطية غير رائدة وهي العلة التي تبطئ بكل سالك جاهل بطريق سفره ولا يبعد انقلابه على عقبيه. So he said knowledge فإن معرفة الطريق قبل السفر, so knowledge of the path before you set out on it, before the journey, بالوصف والدليل, right, in terms of description and dalil, a guide or guidance. أيسر, it's easier for the traveler than to go out on the path, the unknown path that is difficult, and especially on a matiyya. The matiyya is your mount, right, what you ride like a horse, camel, whatever. غير رائضة, an uncooperative mount, right? So a wild horse or an animal that has been trained, so you don't know the path, you don't know the way, you can't see it, you're on an animal that's not trained, how are you going to travel the path? وهي العلة التي تبطئ بكل سالك جاهل بطريق سفره ولا يبعد انقلابه على عقبيه. And this is the illah, this is the major defect that slows down every journeyer, every seeker who is ignorant of the path of his journey, or the path of his journey, and it is not a remote possibility that he may actually ينقلب على عقبيه, right? ينقلب على عقبيه, that they don't make it, that literally means flip over on your head, but here it means that you fall out, you can't traverse the path. وعلى الجملة من ركب مطية غير رائدة ومر بطريق مجهول لا يتأتى منه وصول المنزل أصلا. And in general, whoever rides a mount that is untrained, that is not cooperative, and on a path that is unknown, they will not reach their destination to begin with. How can they reach the destination? So as we said in the very beginning, the journey is the destination. So setting out with the proper provision on the journey then gets you to your destination. And then you will learn during the journey that you already reached your destination. This is the destination. ولا سيما إذا كان السالك متشبها بالسالكين دون حقيقة بلا نعل ولا زاد مبلغ، وقد يتعذر وصول المنزل على ذي حزم واجتهاد وزاهد في الكونين، فإن الزهد في الكونين بداية الغيبة عن الخلق وأول المعراج إلى رياض المشاهدة وهي مقام الواصلين، فكيف يصل من أهمل نفسه وحمل دنياه على عاتقه. So he said, especially if the salik, if the seeker, متشبها بالسالكين دون حقيقة, right? This is especially true of someone who appears to be amongst the salikin, right? The other travelers, like you look like them, but you're not really from them. ليس على الحقيقة, as he says, دون حقيقة, but not really. Why? بلا نعل ولا زاد مبلغ. You're not wearing any shoes. You don't have any provision that will get you where you want to go, but you're just kind of talking the talk, but not walking the walk. وقد يتعذر وصول المنزل على ذي حزم واجتهاد وزاهد في الكونين. Right? And even someone, they may not be able to get to the destination, even if they have hazm, if they're serious and they have ijtihad and they're struggling, and there's zahid fil kawnayn. Zahid fil kawnayn means that you are also not distracted by this world or the next. فإن الزهد في الكونين بداية الغيبة عن الخلق وأول المعراج إلى رياض المشاهدة وهي مقام الواصلين. As he said earlier, الزهد في الكونين is the beginning of the absence from the khalq, so not to be preoccupied with creation. وأول المعراج, and the first ascendancy, the first rise إلى رياض المشاهدة, right, to the Jannah and plain, the garden of mushahada, of immediate witnessing of the divine presence. وهي مقام الواصلين, and this is the maqam, this is the station of those who have arrived, the wasilin. فكيف يصل من أهمل نفسه وحمل دنياه على عاتقه. So how can someone who forgets about themselves and is burdening themselves with the trappings of the dunya, how could they possibly arrive to the destination? So that section, he's kind of mapping out, I think, the rest of this chapter anyway, the rest of this section, in the sense that you have to give something up. There has to be some sacrifice. So yes, we are highly encouraged to be amongst the salihin. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وكونوا مع الصادقين. Surah At-Tawbah as well, I believe. يا أيها الذين آمنوا, oh, you believe, اتقوا الله, have taqwa of Allah, rise to a higher consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وكونوا مع الصادقين, and be with the صادقين, the people of sidq, right? The people who are of the highest caliber of honesty and sincerity and trustworthiness. And this is the same word sidq where sadiq comes from. So the sadiq is the friend, right? But the true friend, the true companion, the one where you are mirror images of one another, right? The one that it's not about putting up an image or a pretense or appearing as something and being invested in the idea that you make a particular sort of impression upon them and they think of you in a particular way because you're interested in something of the dunya that they may possess or have. That's not friendship. That's not sadaqa, right? Because there's no honesty in that. There's no trustworthiness. There's no sincerity in that. The true relationship, the true friendship, and تكون صديق لأحد, right, to be their true friend, is without pretense, right? And they have a saying, they say, إذا حصل إذا حصل الأنس سقطت الكلفة, right? If there's uns, if there's intimacy in the friendship, there's true sincerity, سقطت الكلفة, right? So there's no taklif, there's no pretense anymore. So a relationship that's still defined by pretense is not a truly relationship based upon sadaqa in the sense that we're talking about here. So yes, we should be amongst the sadiqeen, but also in order for you to be someone who's not just going to benefit from their relationship with you, their friendship, and that maybe you add something to the relationship, you have to have sidq. You have to have honesty, you have to have sincerity. And first and foremost, you have to be sincere with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you're not sincere with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how can you be sincere with others? Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab is narrated in the Muwatta. He wrote to his wulat, he wrote to his provincial governors when he was the Khalifa. And he said to them that the most important thing that you guys have to do, and he's talking to them as provincial governors, is the salah, is the prayer. And then he said, وَمَنْ ضَيَعَ صَلَاتُهُ فَكَانَ لِغَيْرِهَا أَضْيَعَ أو كما قال. And whoever is remiss and negligent and is not serious about their prayer, كَانَ لِغَيْرِهَا أَضْيَعَ. Then they will not be serious about anything else. How could we take them seriously? How can they be sincere if the most important relationship they have, namely with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they're not sincere in? So how then can we accept or expect sincerity in other relationships? So let's start on the next section with the remaining time that we have. فصل كيف تنفتح للعبد أبواب السعادة إذا كانت نفسه للسر حجابا. He says, how can the doors of happiness open up for the servant of Allah if your ego, your lower soul, is a veil over your sir, right, your innermost being. And we said the innermost being is that which connects directly with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that will remain hidden and sort of downtrodden and disenfranchised. Is still part of who you are, but the bigger your ego gets, then the less chance that your sir can have an opportunity to talk with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that will come out. He says, وَعَلَمْ يَا أَخِي أَنَّ الطَّرِيقَ صَعَبٌ وَالسَّفَرَ مُرٌّ وَالصَّبْرَ جَمْرٌ فكيف الوصول عليه والعقل ضعيف والزاد طفيف والمفازة مسبعة والنفس عنه مروعة والهمة عنه منصرفة وجنود الهوى مؤتلفة والقلوب من الدنيا علقت والألسن بالعويل على فقدها نطقت وسلطان الكسل في الصدر قد سكن وظلام الفتور في النفس تمكن فكيف تنفتح للعبد الأبواب إذا كانت نفسه للسر حجابا فهذا طريق قل سلاكه لما كان الورع ملاكه. So very, very effective and poetic words in the beginning. He says, know that the path is difficult and that the journey is bitter and that patience is like a hot coal. So how can one arrive, how can one reach their destination and their intellect is weak and their provision is little and the path itself is full of dangers? He says, وَالْمَفَازَةُ مُسْبِعَةٌ يعني مليئة بالسباع. Sibaa is any animal of prey, predatory animal, but usually lion, something like that. So the path is full of dangers. وَالنَّفْسُ عَنْهُ مُرَوَّعَةٌ. Right? And the nafs is not cooperative, it's trying to scare you. وَالْهِمَّةُ عَنْهُ مُنْصَرِفَةٌ. And your aspiration for this munsarifa, it's like wanes, it's not there. وَجُنُودُ الْهَوَى مُؤْتَلِفَةٌ. Right? And then the legions of caprice are cooperating with one another. Right? You don't really have society around you to help you, and you also have your own internal issues you're dealing with, so they're all kind of mu'talifah, cooperating against you. وَالْقُلُوبُ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا عَلِقَتْ. Right? And the hearts are connected with the dunya. وَالْأَلْسُنُ بِالْعَوِيلِ عَلَى فَقْدِهَا نَطَقَتْ. Right? And then tongues will writhe in pain or sigh in pain when they lose something of the dunya. That's how they express themselves. So we get very animated and expressive when we lose something of the dunya. وَسُلْطَانِ الْكَسَلِ فِي الصَّدْرِ قَدْ سَكَنْ. Right? And the sultan, right, the overbearing sultan of laziness has taken up residence in your heart, في الصدر, like in your chest, in your heart. وَظَلَامُ الْفُطُورِ فِي النَّفْسِ تَمَكَّنَا. Right? And the darkness of lapse, right, in your soul has tamakkana, right, has also taken up residence or established itself. فكيف تنفتح للعبد الأبواب. So how can the doors be opened? إذا كانت نفسه للسر حجابا. Right, if your nafs is blocking, is veiling your sir, who you really are. فهذا طريق قل سلاكه لما كان الورع ملاكه. So this path that we're talking about, there's not too many people interested in it. لما كان الورع ملاكه. When scrupulousness, right, والانصراف عن الدنيا, and not being enamored with what everybody else is enamored with, on their Instagram and on their Snapchat and on their Pinterest and all these other things. That's why there's not going to be too many people who's going to be interested in all of this. So it doesn't exactly paint a rosy picture, but وَمَا ذَلِكَ عَلَى اللَّهِ بِعَزِيزٍ, right? It's not impossible for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. ثم يقول لعمرك ما تثبت على هذا الطريق قدم سالك إلا من لم يبالي برزق مقتر ولا بكرب مكرر ولا بحزن يحل ولا بفرح يرحل ولا بدنيا زويت ولا بمنزلة وضعت ولا بسرور معجل ولا بحظ نفس مؤجل فهذا صنف موسوم بالقلة والمتشبه بهم إذا امتحن افتضح فإن من وعر الطريق يتأتى امتحان السالكين فإذا بدت صعوبات الطريق امتاز السائر عن الراجع طريق الزاهدين إلى الله تعالى بين وعر وصعوبة وبين مشقة ومصيبة هذا في حق العوام من أبناء الآخرة وهو أيضا بين لذة وعذوبة ويسر وسهولة في حق خصوصهم لأن شرب عموم أبناء الدنيا من عين الجزع وشرب أبناء الآخرة من عين الصبر وشرب خصوصهم من عين الرضا قد علم كل أناس مشربهم. So he says لعمرك, like wallahi, by your life ما تثبت على هذا الطريق قدم سالك إلا من يبالي برزق مقتر. No one is going to find stability on this path, on this way, except for the one who is not that concerned about rizq muqattar. Yani muqattar, yani your provision, your life provision, your life sustenance, your means, sometimes in, sometimes a lot, sometimes that much. If this is what preoccupies you and takes up your days and nights in terms of your energy, then this path is not for you, he's saying. وَلَا بِكَرْبٍ مُكَرَّرٍ, right? Or karb, right? Calamities. You see everything as a calamity, as repeating itself. Also will be difficult. وَلَا بِحُزْنٍ يَحُلْ, right? Or with grief that takes residence. وَلَا بِفَرَحٍ يَرْحَلْ, or with happiness that comes and goes, right? This should not be all of, in other words, he's saying all these things should not be our preoccupation. وَلَا بِدُنْيَا زُوِيَتْ, or dunya that comes and sometimes is taken away from you. وَلَا بِمَنْزِلَةٍ وُضِعَتْ, or status or prestige or reputation that you're given, sometimes taken away. وَلَا بِسُرُورٍ مُعَجَّلٍ, right? Or with surur or joy that comes and goes, mu'ajjal, sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. وَلَا بِحَظِّ نَفْسٍ مُؤَجَّلٍ, right? Or حظ nafs, or looking for allotment, something for your ego, even if it's mu'ajjal, sometime in the future. فَهَذَا صِنْفٌ مَوْسُومٌ بِالْقِلَّةِ, right? This group of people we're talking about, they're few. وَالْمُتَشَبِّهُ بِهِمْ إِذَا امْتُحِنَ افتضح. And the one who appears like them and wants to go that path, but when they are tested, افتضح, then they will be, everything will be brought to light and they may be humiliated and they'll see that they're not of this path. فَإِنَّ مِنْ وَعْرِ الطَّرِيقِ يَتَأَتَّى امْتِحَانُ السَّالِكِينَ. So from the dangers and difficulties of the path will come the tests for the سالكين. فإذا بدت صعوبات الطريق امتاز السائر عن الراجع. So when the difficulties start to come, then we see the difference between السائر, the one who's progressing, who's making their way, عن الراجع, then the one who's turning back. فطريق الزاهدين الله تعالى بين وعر وصعوبة. So the path of the Zahideen to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is between dangers and difficulties, and between mashaqqa, hardships and calamities. هذا في حق العوام من أبناء الآخرة. This is talking about the general salikin from the people of the sons and daughters of the akhirah. But what about the other groups? وهو أيضا بين لذة وعذوبة, right? But this other group can be between pleasure and purity. ويسر وسهولة, right? And ease and facilitation, or facilitation and ease. في حق خصوصهم, amongst the khusus, amongst the more elite group of أبناء الآخرة. لأن شرب عموم أبناء الدنيا من عين الجزع. Because the spring from which most of the people of the sons and daughters of the dunya drink from is from the spring of panic. In other words, when a calamity strikes, or something undesirable happens, they panic. They think all is lost. And they think, what should I do now? And this preoccupies their thoughts. وشرب أبناء الآخرة من عين الصبر. But for عموم أبناء الآخرة, for the general group amongst the sons and daughters of the Akhirah, their spring is from the spring of forbearance and patience. So they drink from that spring and they still taste the bitterness of their situation, but they're able to forge their way through it. وشرب خصوصهم, right? And then from the khusus, from amongst the people of the sons and daughters of Akhirah, their spring is from the spring of rida, of contentment with their Lord. And contentment with your Lord means you're content with everything your Lord gives you. قد علم كل أناس مشربهم ويلتمس الآية. So this is called التماس, Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 60. This is originally talking about أولاد Israel, or Yaqub, so the children of Israel. They had 12 different springs. قد علم كل أناس مشربهم. Everybody knows their mashrab, right? Everybody knows where they're going to drink from. لعمرك لقد جد السير بمن عرف نفسه وطاب عيش من صدق ربه وأشرق نهار العقل على من فارق ليل الجهل. He said, be convinced, لعمرك لقد جد السير بمن عرف نفسه. The one who knows themselves, that knows their nafs and the inner workings and the trappings of the nafs, جد في السير, right? They're serious on their path. وطاب عيش من صدق ربه, right? And the aish, or the living of the one who believes their Lord, will be pleasant, will be pure, will be tayyib. وأشرق نهار العقل على من فارق الليل الجهل. And the daybreak, the light of day, of intellect, will shine upon the one who has left the darkness of the night of ignorance, or the darkness of ignorance. So that all kind of is a prelude to the next sections, which will begin next time, which will deal with different maqams of khawf, of a higher consciousness, and how that relates to our reverence or fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we will stop here, inshaAllah. Barakallahu feekum. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.